Sullivan University is 117 years old, rich with legacies and traditions.
The only thing constant in this world is change.
We, as a university, seek ways to ameliorate the conditions before us today.
And we continue to adapt to the challenges of this changing world.
A leading Christian institution committed to total human development for the well-being of society and environment. And our education is to be used as a tool for the well-being of society and the only place, the earth, we all live in.
Come to think of it, whole person education was with us ever since we began. It starts with values, Christian values, a seed which is planted in every Suleimanian. Our commitment is on fire. Faith, instruction, research, extension.
Whole person education in the university's teaching and non-teaching programs and services. Education for total human development should be sustained as an educational framework.
In Silliman, we strive to offer quality education. And part of the quality education in Silliman is to offer our students a variety of venues for learning. These are what we call the 5 C's of Silliman education. The first C, of course, is the classroom, where students learn and engage professors and faculty who are among the best in the country.
Whole person education as one that promotes multidisciplinarity, inclusiveness, self-direction, and social responsibility.
Responsive to the needs of today.
With liberal arts education, we as an institution provide an atmosphere of inclusion more than exclusion. People of all creeds, people coming from different countries, personal and political orientations, people with different work backgrounds and socio-economic levels can all be a part of a community of learning. The multiple sources of learning here at Silliman that we identify to be the classroom, our athletic grounds, our church, our cultural center, the community in general. All these allow for various perspectives and learning applications that help realize the educational aspirations of all who enter the gates of Silliman.
Sports is integral to Silliman.
The second C would be the courts, the athletic fields, where students and faculty and staff come together regularly in order to celebrate the value of the body in relation to the mind.
Where is multidisciplinarity in whole person education? Subscribing to the concept that education is life necessarily entails that our teaching and learning must go beyond the narrow confines of our individual disciplines. The more collaboration we have with other fields or disciplines, the better we are at approximating the truths we are searching. Promoting multidisciplinarity, linkages, and networks among faculty, staff, and students, as well as interactions between and among academic units and divisions, does not only build skills, but also establish fellowship, harmony among one another.
The third venue for Silliman education would be the cultural centers. Many times in the year, the students are given a dose of cultural activities that will allow them to delve into the sensitivities of the human nature.
As to whole person education and self-direction with social responsibility, excellence in programs and services provided to students is not an end of itself. It is hoped that the education attained becomes an instrument for a higher purpose, like doing service to others.
Sillimanians throughout the years have always had the opportunity to learn directly from local communities around Negros Oriental and even throughout the country.
We have community service, structured health teachings. Not only does it improve our skills, we're also given the chance to give back to the community, serve them, and try to empower them in order to build a better community.
Another major feature of Silliman education is this education of the soul and of the spirit through the church. This is where our students learn of the value of nurturing their spiritual life.
What we have right now is on the pre-computer education for the senior citizen, and it is a 3-year commitment of Silliman and to the community.
Whole person education is not just our commitment, it is our way of life. It is who we are. Silliman University.
Let us bow down our heads and put ourselves in the holy presence of God. Let us pray. Lord God, as we gather today for a celebration of this event physically and virtually, may you fill us with your power, your presence, and your happiness. May this meeting today create a memorable experience and a fruitful discussion as we prepare ourselves for the limited face-to-face instruction. May we hold this memory into our hearts as we continue in our adventures. And may your blessings follow us in the new journey of time. We ask this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday session. This is our Wednesday session on it. It is a seminar on limited face-to-face instruction. So this is like a soft launching of a series of high-flex seminars. So this will be like we will have a series of high-flex mode seminars by June, and of course we will have it. We will also show you later on our setup. So we're actually in high-flex mode. So we have our live audience here. If you look into the user ICI laboratory, we have our live audience here, and of course, I know that we are joined by a number of us virtually. So without further ado, and I'm excited because it has been a while that we haven't really met in person, let me welcome our Vice President for Academic Affairs to give us our welcome.
Thank you, Ma'am Alfie. Mayong hapon kaninyo tanan. Indeed, we are in this new modality practically by May 11, we will be transitioning from the ODL to what we call as the limited face-to-face. And what we are doing right now is actually what we call walking the talk and talking the walk, if you might call it. We are on a high flex mode. That means we have live audience here. And at the same time, this is also live streamed the ODL way. So this is basically, and I think the word will really be eternal. That phrase limited face-to-face is actually what we call high flex now, right? Because of course, because of the condition that we are in. And so to all of you who are joining here live, and those who are in the virtual world, I'd like to welcome all of you. And at the same time, I'd like to thank the director, Sir Dave, and of course, Ma'am Alfie, and all the staff of Seoul, and of course, our benefactor, Dr. Mariano Lau, for the ICI laboratory for spearheading this seminar on limited face-to-face. In the program, you will hear the experiences of colleagues, students, and from the different levels of how they do high flex. So this is going to be what we call, again, as our new normal as we transition to the real limited face-to-face mode by, in fact, you know that the medical and allied health programs have started, and there are actually other programs that I authorized to start, especially those with skills, competencies, and the need to really handle machines and equipment. So this is now a synergy of the hard and the soft wares and the face and the live audiences. And so we want to know the setup, we want to know the essence of the preparation, whether it's going to be very expensive or not, or actually you can do it on your own, or maybe you will have your own innovative way of doing face-to-face. But at the end of the day, we continue to upskill, we continue to train, we continue to prepare, because this is the best way on how to adapt to new environment and new circumstances. So that's it. To everyone, I'm here live. This is also my first time in 2 years to be live, facing live people. And also facing the virtual audience. So yes, welcome to this seminar. And as they say, this is the beginning of more engaging high flex modality. So God bless you, and thank you, and welcome to this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cleope. So indeed, it's like the beginning of more engaging high flex mode of learning to come. So before I introduce our next speaker, I will just give you a glimpse of what we have here. So as I have mentioned earlier, so we're on high flex mode. So that's why I am actually talking to you here. If I am addressing to people virtually, and then I'm also face facing my live audience here. So it's really this kind of setup, and to encourage everyone, encourage the teachers. We are actually just making use of one laptop because our laptops can actually be shown also in our projectors, and then we could actually also make use of that one in sharing our screen, especially if we're using PowerPoint slides. So it's really like that. So again, if you'd want to look into our live audience, it's in ICI, the ICI user there. So you could just click on that one and you will see that we really have live audience. So with that one, I know that everyone has maybe heard a lot lately about HyFlex learning, but what is really HyFlex learning? So this afternoon, okay, so this afternoon we will be listening to our speaker because he will help us understand what is HyFlex learning. But before that, let me give you the rules for our webinars, or for those who are joining us online, that please mute your microphone when not in use, and then you can turn on your camera if your connectivity allows you. And then please participate in the open forum, because we will have one later when all of our speakers have already shared their experiences in the limited face-to-face. And then let me remind everyone that, of course, because this is a HyFlex modality, so we're still recording this session for others to have a view or to watch if they are not available now. And you may access the recording in our YouTube account. That's a YouTube channel. Sorry, that's in the Soul YouTube channel. All right. So to open our list of speakers, and of course to let us understand more about HyFlex learning, let us all welcome the Director of Soul, Dr. Dave E. Marshall.
Thank you, Al, and thank you to all those who attended today. Let me stop my sharing because I'll be opening my slides also. Hi, Ma'am Gina. Hi, Ma'am Bridget, to Dr. Nasvik who are here. Of course, our speaker, Dr. Lily. Thank you for joining us, and to the rest of our colleagues in Silliman University. Thank you for joining us, and we are excited actually for this. To us also at Soul Office, I really what's this? It is really our objective to show and demonstrate also to each and everyone that nothing really to be scared, because kaya jud na siya nato in our own little way. Don't be too Don't be scared with our setup in terms of, actually my screen is a touch screen, but you don't need to have that in your classroom. You can just have a projector into that. Our colleague here in the office told me, "Sir, pwede kang mag-slide no sa imuhang kuan," but I told them na ayaw kay makuratan na pud nang ato ang mga kauban, muingon na pud ni, hala paliti mi og projector nga touchscreen. Lisod na, no? Unya moingon na putag tanang classroom dapat na ay touchscreen. Dili. Ang kinahanglan na jud nato is basically a desktop and a laptop with one camera. We just added one view of our camera here, the account of ICI Lab, so that you can see actually our audience. Later, our colleague, Dr. Bautista, and from our MedTech department will be sharing to us how they did it. But for this afternoon, in my part, I'll be sharing with you a basic understanding about what is HyFlex, because many are actually asking of what's really a HyFlex mode of delivery. Now, I modified my title, and it talks about blended, hybrid, and HyFlex, because these are strategies for limited face-to-face, because not all the times actually that we will be using, or not all instances that we'll be using HyFlex if we have limited face-to-face. For example, one of our speaker later on, wala siya katry og HyFlex because all of the students are actually online. I mean, are actually on the limited face-to-face. So there is no portion of the HyFlex. And one of our speaker also really experienced HyFlex because some of the students could not come to Silliman. So therefore, they are considered as part of the HyFlex. So that's my objective for this afternoon. Revisiting what is a blended learning, try to give more meaning of what is blended, hybrid, and HyFlex as strategies for limited face-to-face instruction. Okay, so what we know so far, we know that there is a joint memorandum curricular 2021. This is actually the guidelines of gradual reopening of campuses of higher education institutions for limited face-to-face classes during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then December of last year, there was another joint memorandum. This is number 4 of 2021. This is the guidelines of implementation for all programs, because the first guideline is limited for allied and health sciences. The second guideline is for all programs. This is where very specific what are needed and so on and so forth. In both guidelines, the limited face-to-face was defined, and it is actually defined as or pertains to restricting the number of students to attend face-to-face classes in campus in any given day based on the degree programs or courses they are enrolled in cyclical, student shifting, rotating schedule, and physical distancing and other health and safety protocols. On Joint Memorandum Circular 004, it is also stated that students who could not participate in the conduct of limited face-to-face classes shall continue to be governed by the CMO number 4 series of 2020. What is this? This is actually on the Commission on Higher Education Circular Memorandum Order, particularly on the flexible learning implementing guidelines. In this case, the HEI shall institute or implement the necessary mechanism so the students who opted for flexible learning shall not be prejudiced. So those are the two. So with those guidelines, I will not go through to the detail of the guidelines. These are the possible scenarios that we may encounter in our class. The first scenario is a section with only full ODL students. So say, for example, all of the students will be allowed by their parents to come to Silliman. So for example, the class is EdTech 101A. Another possible scenario could be a section with limited face-to-face students only. Meaning, all of the students could come to Silliman. The first is none of your students will go to on campus, and all of them will go for online distance learning. The second scenario is your class or your section, all of them will be allowed by their parents and to do the limited face-to-face students. That's the second scenario. The third scenario is a section with full ODL students and a student with a face-to-face. Meaning, let's say, for example, if you have 20 students in your class, 10 of these are allowed to come to campus, which are considered as the face-to-face student, and perhaps 10 of those will not come to Silliman because for whatever reasons, they will just go on with the full ODL students. The fourth, and I would just like to complicate the scenario, is a course or a subject. Say, for example, EdTech, the subject is EdTech. with sections having a combination of 1, 2, and 3. So say, for example, I'm handling EdTech courses. I have 3 sections. One section of that is for full ODL. One section of that with students with limited face-to-face. And another section is a combination of full online students and unlimited face-to-face. Those are possible scenarios. I'm not saying that that may happen, but it's a possible scenario based on the guidelines stipulated in the joint memorandum order. Now, before I will go to HyFlex, let me revisit technology-enhanced teaching and learning framework. What we did during the transition from face-to-face to full ODL, we were conscious enough to think of how can we redefine our curriculum, our syllabus, modify, augment, and substitution. And we always claim that we have different levels of integration. Perhaps some teachers are in the transformation stage or some are in the enhancement stage. Because we have a learning management system, research always telling us that if we have an LMS and fully utilized, we are actually under the substitution phase. Okay, that's in general based on research. In our full ODL, I think we are very expert enough already when it comes to synchronous and asynchronous. Asynchronous, these are our activities that we posted at our MySoul, while the synchronous, we are using Zoom, we are using Big Blue Button, Google Meet, LARC, and so on and so forth. We also emphasize that there should be connection and engagement during or within the dot, no, to connect your asynchronous and synchronous learning, and that's what we call bichronous online learning. Why I have to revisit that? Because that is still applicable when we choose any of these 3 that will swap and suit in the different and possible scenarios that I mentioned a while ago. So there are 3 technology-oriented pedagogies that we can use if we will encounter any of those scenarios that I presented to you. This is the blended, the hybrid, and the HyFlex. Let me share with you what is a blended learning. I think we often hear this even before COVID. During our research before COVID time, permi guni nato ning ginagamit blended learning, technology integration, and so on. So blended learning in the context of limited face-to-face, learning happens in face-to-face sessions and online. Blended learning na siya with both modalities integrated into a cohesive learning experience. How do we operationalize cohesive learning experience? It means that online materials and activities are meant to complement each other, to supplement and build upon rather than replacing face-to-face time. That is why blended learning is very, or what is being used actually pre-COVID or before COVID, because there is no reduction of our face-to-face time. We did this when we launched our learning management system. We did this during the time of when we promote upskilling, retooling among our faculty, and that is called blended learning. There is no reduction in terms of the face-to-face time. What is a hybrid? Oh, going back, by the way, for the blended learning, this is applicable. This is only applicable if you have homogeneous form of students in terms of attendance. So let's say, for example, if all of your students will come for limited face-to-face, then use blended learning because that is most applicable. There is no reduction perhaps in your face-to-face time because you're going to meet like 8 to 10, but pwede man po siyang na reduction, which is on the second, the hybrid learning. So what is a hybrid learning? In contrast with blended courses, hybrid learning or courses replace much of the face-to-face time with online interaction. And a significant portion of the course takes place online. Kaning hybrid, ginagamit ni siya during the time of those with, if na atong mga manual bitaw, like na manual, kinahanglang mo ato si estudyante kay mo drop and then i-collect. So something like that. That is why it's called hybrid. There is face-to-face and there is also online. But majority and the interaction is really more of replacing the face-to-face interaction. In short, hybrid learning is most applicable for a class nga wala kay combination of full online students and the limited face-to-face. In other words, kung atong estudyante come May 9 or in the future, kung ang imuhang 30 ka estudyante, all of them will sign in for the limited face-to-face, obviously all of them can come to Silliman University. Therefore, I suggest you use hybrid learning, not the blended learning. Kaning blended learning, ang akong suggestion ani is gamiton lang na siya nato if wala na jud ng limited face-to-face. Mubalik na ta nga we can, we can meet our class from the whole time, but just make sure that there is still technology. In other words, dili na to balikan on how we define blended learning before COVID, but let's define blended learning after COVID. So hybrid learning, the online components can be synchronous or asynchronous. Okay, so for example, if I have group of students, 15 students, all of them will come. But because dili man pwede nga everyday pa mi mag-meet, kay limited pa man siya, and so on and so forth, skills naman ang importante. So therefore, moingon ko, all my lecture are to be done online. Okay? Or there are other activities, oral presentation about the topic is to be done online. So that's hybrid. But when it comes to assessment, see me on Monday. We will meet at the laboratory because we will be doing the assessment and skills validation. So that's hybrid learning. Makisawsaw si flip learning because I also often hear this kind of pedagogy, technology-oriented pedagogy, flip learning. So what is flip learning? Flip learning, students learn fundamental knowledge prior to class through an online component and expand upon that knowledge through activities conducted in class. So flip learning also existed before COVID. There are actually many schools are doing that before COVID. All the readings, all the lecture, nana dito sa video, and then when they come to class, all are experimentations, presentations, skills validation, assessment, and others. Flip courses are blended courses and may also be hybrid courses. So what term is to be used? So pwede tang flip learning, but to be more specific, we can use either a hybrid or a blended learning. And I highly suggest for hybrid learning. Let's proceed to the last. The last is the HyFlex learning. Ano ni siya, no? What is a HyFlex learning? A HyFlex learning comes actually from the word hybrid and flexible. Take note that during the full ODL that we have, our works at that time is flexible learning. We are on flexible learning. At Silliman, we are at flexible learning, but technology-oriented flexible learning. And we opted full online distance type of flexible learning. So with the post-pandemic, it's called HyFlex, which a combination of hybrid and flexible. By the name itself, pwede ka tong hybrid nga kung i-introduce, and at the same time, your concept about flexible learning that were introduced in that CMO number 4. Each class is offered in person and then synchronously online and asynchronously online to provide a flexible experience. And mao ni ang catch lang, no? Ang nakapalisod gamay, multiple modes of participation. Multiple modes of participation because just like in the guideline, the joint CMO, the joint memorandum order, students have the option whether they will go for limited or not. So by definition, high-flex learning, students actually are given choice in how they participate in the course and engage with the material and can change, and can change their method of participation throughout the course. So technically, it's something like this. For example, 5 of your students will say, "Mom, my parents do not allow me to come. So mag-full ODL ra ko, ma'am." And then in the middle of the sem, ingon si estudyante nga, "Ma'am, allowed na jud. So pwede na kong start on the midterm." No? Theoretically, that is allowed if we are using high-flex learning. That is why we have to really put into our policies and guidelines how flexible our high-flex learning is. Kay base ni siya og nga abuse nga, "Ma'am, dili ko mag flexible learning, and then ma'am next week mo full na pud ko, or ma'am next week mo limited face-to-face na pud ko." Lisod na siya. Why? Because, again, the preparation factor. Okay? So, it could be, the change of the participation, the mode of participation could be weekly, by topic, or according to preference. Muna akong gimin nga, we really have to set policies and guidelines in relation to the flexibility in the kind of high-flex learning modality that we are going to use. A high-flex learning, to illustrate, is something like this. Okay? It should be a student choice based on what is mandated is the students can still opt not to or to. And then there are students who will go for face-to-face, okay? Face-to-face classes, and students who can hear the information, in-person group. And this one, the students are the synchronous, or during your lecture, they are on Zoom or any video session that you will do. And take note that both of them, the in-person and the online students, will still go through to the institution's learning management system. Pinaka-importante si learning management system in a high-flex modality, because that LMS will be the one to connect the two different groups of learners, the in-person and the online student. So it's something like this. If you have a course, and then, or a subject, you have your online students or face-to-face. The students, again, can make choice. This could be the possible number of students you will do. The one that I presented a while ago during the introduction about the possible scenario could be 100% online or less, or a combination of, and so on and so forth. This is just an illustration of what I mentioned a while ago. Now, participation in face-to-face synchronous class session in person, that inside the classroom. Just like today, this afternoon, our colleagues in Seoul office are considered as my students. I am here talking, and you actually on Zoom are considered my virtual students. Okay? Virtual students. For you to be able to get your certificate, you need to go to MySeoul to download, right, Sir Fredley? And that is participate fully asynchronous via MySeoul. It's something like that. That's the analogy that I could give you to illustrate the high-flex learning. High-flex learning is not just easy, just like what we experienced when we had our face-to-face to full online. There are also pillars of high-flex that non-negotiable. One is, again, in a high-flex modality, that is why even the commission and some other educational institutions promoting high-flex, it is because that's really appropriate for the CMO or on the guidelines on the limited face-to-face. It's learner's choice. learners, not the instructor, determines and how they will participate within the guidelines. Remember of the learning journey that we learn, that we know about online distance learning and even during blended learning. Diyan na siya, learner's choice. Second pillar is equivalency. Learning activities, regardless of delivery mode, support the same learning outcomes. You just imagine that. So say for example, if pasabot is, if I have an activity for my face-to-face, that should be the same activity for my online students. Okay, I just attended also a seminar on this, and the always respond is recalibration, calibrate it. What you will do for your face-to-face? By context, according to their access to technology and access to the environment and so on. But it's not that easy actually. You really have to think and plan how you could a preparation of a material alone, a teaching material for the face-to-face and a teaching material for the online students. Okay, so learning activities regardless of delivery mode support the same learning outcomes. Third is reusability. It's the use of the same learning objects or artifacts for all students in all participating modes. So my material, my PDF, my PowerPoint for my face-to-face student should be adaptable and reusable and applicable for my online students. Okay? So unsaon man na siya nato, di ba? Lahi man ang visuals nga preparation for face-to-face, and there is also guidelines to prepare visuals and animation for online students. So they should meet halfway, no? Kay dili man ta pwede. Just to give you an example. An example is when we prepare a PowerPoint slide for a classroom, it should be 4x6 or 6x6, like 6 words and 6 words in 6 lines. So that is on face-to-face. But in online, sayang because you don't need to do that because students are just actually watching 1 meter away from their computer. So you don't need to follow the guidelines on preparing a PowerPoint of face-to-face compared to your online students. So all you have to do, there are many research now, there are many researchers doing all of this, how to meet face-to-face and online in the HyFlex pillars. The fourth is accessibility. Learners need the technology and skills to use the technology to access course materials. Wala tay problema ani because all our students came from full ODL and they expert enough, they master already in terms of use and accessibility of our learning management system. Not unless you as the teacher for the face-to-face, you will introduce another tool or software nga lisod to be used for an online students. Okay? So for example, si Sir Freddy moingon nga in his class empowerment technology and then na siya gi-introduce nga hardware. Okay, we will use this because this will illustrate our discussion and demo. That's for the face-to-face, but how they can access it for those students who are in Zoom. And they cannot participate it man. So, ang buhaton, maunang manggawas ning mga simulator and all mga 3D simulation software para lang maka-access sila just like what the face-to-face student can also access. So some of the ideal setup, dili lang ta ani no, pero ako lang ding gi-present really of the ideal setup of what an ideal setup of a HyFlex model. Kaning one is medyo dako ni siya gasto. Pero di siya pang siliman. Pero okay ra para lang natin idea what a HyFlex setup really, no, the real setup. There's a teacher. This is the instructor here, okay, and at the same time the face or the in-class live student. Then this is actually the technology. Remote students here online. They chat or they meet real time, no? Real time, and at the same time also asynchronously. Okay? So the interplay of HyFlex class instructor, face-to-face student, and remote student, ang pinaka requirement lang yun ani nga technology in the HyFlex is, of course, your video conference platform. Kay to make sure that they can meet each other. I mean, the learners can meet each other. So this setup also is a lecture-oriented HyFlex setup centering on an instructor presenting to students. So there's a camera on the top, just like what you can see in our one. We have a camera here. I'm sorry, here, that one, we have a camera. And then there's a podium, just like what I'm using now, a sort of a podium. And there's another camera at the back, just like what you can see of the account of ICI Steve. That is actually a smartphone and connected to Zoom. Then you can see the entire classroom. Okay? They can see the entire classroom. In this setup, maginahanglan ni siya og assistant, technical assistant, no? So kung mag-HyFlex ta, recommendable gyud or suggestion gyud is there should be an assistant to, if we want a seamless interaction of the online and the in-person students. There are publications na nanggawas karon nga ang challenge really on HyFlex is ma-let out ang naa sa online. Why? Because some of the challenges, because no one is monitoring. The teacher has so many things to look after. One, maglantaw pa siya sa inyong slide, mulantaw pa siya sa ihang Zoom, mulantaw pa siya sa face-to-face student. If mo raise hand ang students dito, iya panduolon. And then, dili na yung taon siya ka monitor sa chat. Labi na kung usara ka laptop, unya mo chat, ang estudyante dili na makita. No? So, many literature really is telling us that to have a technical assistant if we are implementing a HyFlex type of learning. Okay. A touch panel, another hybrid one. I mean, a more nice setup. A touch panel for HyFlex setup in Figure 2 allows the instructor to toggle between presets of camera and the camera train of the front. This one is highly complicated ang mga camera. The teacher can actually drive around the camera. So let's say, for example, if one student wanted to talk to, if one online student wanted to talk to an in-face student, the teacher can set there's a control that they can meet each other and so on, no? So it needs really a HyFlex technology. Na ano man po tayo gitawag ng HyFlex technology na mga camera and then microphone on the center and then microphone here, and then the teacher using the remote can just, navigate the angle of the camera just to make sure that the online learners can interact and be engaged with the in-person learners. Okay, Figure 4, distribute a video model for a smaller seminar. No? So let's say, for example, we'll do a seminar, something like this. So the red one is the instructor here. The square are the remote. These are the students, no, online students, while the circle are the live students. So for example, if you have a class, na ay estudyante, na ay, di ba, kung what is this, social distancing, but level 1, 100% naman kung level 1, di ba? But kung na ay social distancing, pwede kang uingon nga, kaninga video, kaninga computer, kaninga space intended ni for the online student na ay monitor dito, no? Kana siya nga setup, it needs a computer inside the lecture room. Okay, something like this. This is live. These are live students. These are computer. The square box is there, are basically desktop computer or laptop computer. Kay mura og seatmate lang ni in person. Nga may ngunay, kumusta ka, no? Pero computer yung istorya. Yun na, medyo dako na siya gasto. Can you imagine if you have 10, 20 students, mo require ka og 10 desktop computer inside your classroom. This is an example. One of our colleagues attended a high flex class in Hong Kong, no? In Hong Kong Baptist University. So nagklase sila, na ay estudyante, if you can see, kaning na sa gamay here, pero naa sa Zoom, those are live students, no? Live student in Hong Kong Baptist University. Si Grace, our colleague at Seoul, di man siya kalarga sa Hong Kong, so she just attended the class here at Silliman, but joining to them. Their setup daw is similar to our setup here. Like there's a computer, there's a desktop, laptop, and then projecting the screen sharing. At the same time, there is a microphone, and there is also a microphone at the back of the class. So Grace can actually participate during the class. Together with Grace, I think is from India also and other. That's the perspective of a student. Okay, as a student, bali si Grace is equivalent to the other side of the world, which is the virtual student. Okay. So that's an example. Another example on the teacher's perspective is something like this. We just also did our experiment. So something like this. Here, the Zoom, on the center is the teacher. Nana siya laptop. Connected na to Zoom ang iyang laptop. And that laptop connected with the projector. Okay? And then this one, this part, this is the phone, smartphone. Dapat naka-Wi-Fi na sa ang mga room. Sir BG, Wi-Fi na po tanan ang room. If ganahan nga, naay mo ani. And then, you have to have another account. So that account will register to the Zoom of your class. And then, the camera is pointing to the classroom. It's just a matter of angle. Like now, you can see that angle. Gibutang na mo sa luyo. Pwede po na uingon ka, especially sa mga laboratory, and then kay demo. Let's say, for example, okay, this is a mug. So, pwede ni mo ingon si assistant. Dool diri siya, and then ipakita na to ang mug. No? Sige, Steve, can you come? Bring the phone. So something like that. It's just a matter of the angle, and at the same time be creative on how you can move. So like what Steve is doing, you can see at the account of ICI Steve. So you can do something like this. So you can perform and perhaps do something like to demonstrate a particular topic or a material. Okay. So, but again, as I mentioned, kanisya nga setup, you will need a technical assistant for that. No, okay. Alangan po, kung ikaw teacher, na-discuss pa ka dire niya. Ikaw na po, oh, kita mo ade, no? Mura mura na og selfie ka, and then maginana. But pwede ra gud na siya, no? But mura kita na lang punta na, no? So inana. But again, there are many ways to do that. Later, for sure, Doc Lily has so many things to share because they have really an actual experience when it comes to the delivery of the hybrid learning. Okay, we have to remember that a high flex class make class meetings and materials available so the students can access them online or in person during or after the session or classes. And most students, regardless of the path taken, will achieve the same learning objective. These are our recommendations. Number one, we have to recalibrate. No, recalibrate na po, no, Dr. Beulah, no, we have to recalibrate na po, Ma'am Biol. Ako pagitaon si Ma'am Beulah. Ma'am Biol, mag-recalibrate na po taani kay bason ag ODL, idiretso na pug tapot para sa HyFlex. No? Pareha sa itong experience nga from face to face, gidiretso og tapot sa ODL. So from ODL or if not HyFlex to hybrid, we have to recalibrate again our syllabus. In other words, if naatay column for asynchronous and synchronous, magdugang na sad ta og hybrid or HyFlex. Which of the topic is synchronous, which of the topic is asynchronous, which of the topic is to be hybrid or HyFlex. Dili pwede nga ato ang full ODL nga syllabus mao toy atong idiretso og tapot and gamito nato in our hybrid or HyFlex delivery or the limited face-to-face. Second, dili ni ako I got this from the requirements of the joint memorandum order. Prepare a catch-up plan for learning when limited face-to-face classes are suspended. Sa CMO on flexible learning, we call this continuity plan, learning continuity plan. But in the guidelines of the limited face-to-face, the joint memorandum, they call it catch-up plan for learning when limited face-to-face classes are suspended. Kay, for example, one takaron o what if after election, mubalik tag 3 simbako or mubalik tag 4 simbako, automatic na siyang suspended ang limited face-to-face. With that automatic nga mabalik ta to full ODL, our syllabus, our delivery, and all our material should be ready. And we should have that catch-up plan. Okay. In my readings and in my attendance to several workshops, ang ginaingon gyud nga during face-to-face skill validation, no? Demonstration and assessment. In other words, ato lang klaruhon, kung mag-limited face-to-face ta, dili jud ta mag-lecture. All the lectures should be done on the online. The limited face-to-face is really for skills acquisition, validation, magpa-exam ta, laboratory, and so on and so forth. Let's go back to the basic in the Bloom's taxonomy. In the technology integration, whether blended, flip, hybrid, or HyFlex learning, we should follow on this concept that for remembering and understanding, that should be done asynchronously. That should be done online. That should be done before your face-to-face class up to and then applying in terms of the applying and analyzing, do that during your face-to-face. And atun sad ka sa pinakataas in the Bloom's taxonomy, the evaluating part and the creating part, give that as an activity outside your classroom. Para we can really maximize the concept of our hybrid. Kay bason og dili do na siya hybrid or dili na siya HyFlex, ato rang gigamit ang technology, just simply a blended learning. So let's focus on skill validation, skill acquisition, and assessment, specifically in our learning outcomes that focuses on the Bloom's taxonomy's application and analysis or analyzing. And last but not the least, let us continue to learn. Let us continue to learn and please attend our training. We are now in the stage of developing training content for flexible learning, blended learning, and hybrid learning. Whether ma-hybrid na siya or ma-HyFlex or blended, we'll still go on with this new normal of teaching and learning. Dili na to kalimtan ang ato ang skill in terms of technology integration. So again, it's just like Aminu, there are 3 possible pedagogical model that we can use after COVID: blended, hybrid, or a HyFlex model. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sir Dave. So I hope everything is clear already when it comes to our definition of or how we describe blended, hybrid, and of course, high flex. So at this juncture, we have actually, there are already colleges that have practiced limited face-to-face in our university. And we have here people or teachers, directors, and even students who will be sharing to us their experiences in their limited face-to-face. So we will be our speakers this time will be online. So we had our two speakers earlier that were here in person. This time for the sharers of their experiences in limited face-to-face, we will be joined by Dr. Lily Ann Bautista. She's the director of Institute of Rehabilitative Sciences, and she will share to us her administrator experience in limited face-to-face. So let's all welcome Dr. Lily Bautista.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just share my screen. All right. Is my screen okay? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, good afternoon again, everyone. So thank you first and foremost to the Soul team and Doc Dave for inviting me to this juncture. I was invited to share some of my experiences related to high flex delivery on an administrative perspective. Initially, I was like, telling Doc Dave that my experiences are mainly in the instructional component, but after I kind of looked through all of my previous folders, then I did realize that we have been like, we did have a lot of high flex delivery that we have done in other components besides teaching. All right. Okay. So I first utilized this high flex strategy, just a little history, as early as 2020. Again, after like digging through my folders of pictures and such, I actually have never even heard of high flex at that time. So that we now use, no? So I just knew that I needed to, at that time, host a workshop, and the speaker wanted us to be present, either like face to face with her, like she's in the United States, so she wanted us to set up something in our rooms, and also like have the students maybe like set up in their own homes. So I kind of had to figure out on how to deliver this workshop of hers in a synchronous mode and also live, so online and live. So I found this quote by William Ward. Pretty much he said, the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the realist adjusts the sails. So I think, at this point, we have to realize that, this is here to stay. So this is, again, is the new normal. So we really should learn and embrace it, and really maybe for the better for every one of us. All right. So the high flex idea, I think I just did just bear with me, just a very brief introduction. So I think Dr. Dave like already covered most of these things. So I think it's very it's a wonderful component, because it can give you three different ways or options for your participants. So they can either choose to be live, either in the classroom or the actual live setting. They can do it through video conference, and they can also do it asynchronously. So one activity that you will plan can actually serve three different purposes. So again, synchronous live, synchronous online, or asynchronous. Three main things to consider. So these are actually things that I thought of. These are the things that I thought I did, in the preparation for the HyFlex strategy. So planning is very important. We need to assess our outcomes. What is it that we want to achieve? Audience identification, device needs, very important, and personal needs. So planning. First, we really need to have a checklist of what are the needs of the activity. What are the things that we really, really would kind of like make it successful? The first step that I really utilize is like, I prepare it as if I'm delivering it in an online setting. So I found this from buffalo.edu. So they have like, some literature on various ways to set up the HyFlex strategy. So I think it's much more difficult to plan the online learning versus the face-to-face. So I do the online planning, and then after that, I just integrate like the face-to-face scenario or the face-to-face plan. We need to identify our audience and then the type of participation that they will be engaging in. We need to make sure that all materials are accessible and in accessible format, just like what Doc Dave said. So like the LMS, the screen sharing and such. We have to identify our equipment needs and room setup. So what is it that you want to do? Identify your online platform to be used. So like Zoom, Google Meet, or Big Blue Button. Coordinate with the technology support, because sometimes you might be planning something and then they might have some ideas that you can pick up on. And for a big event, I usually do a test session. Okay, so that way you know that everything is working, there's no echoing or feedback or whatnot. Outcomes assessment. So as what Doc Dave said, outcomes actually should not change. No, so our outcomes should still be the same, even if it's live or asynchronous or they're online. So it should be all the same outcomes for all of our participants. So we have to identify those learning outcomes, and then we need to make sure that the activities that we are going to do will align or meet these outcomes that we have set for our participants. The activities must be engaging and can be presented effectively both in the online and live setting simultaneously. So it shouldn't be confusing. So the speaker and maybe an assistant should be able to facilitate. You have to first identify, for example, using small groups, you have to ask those questions. How will you engage all the groups? If you're using a whiteboard and a marker and you're writing on the whiteboard, how will the participant in the online setting see what you are writing? So we have to determine exactly what the outcomes will be for those particular participants. We have to determine whether group or individual activities, one-on-one ba siya, or is it going to be like a small group discussion? Will you be presenting in a traditional way, or you will just be acting as a facilitator of, like, let's say, a group activity? So these are some of the questions that you need to ask first. That way you can really plan ahead on how you would set up your HyFlex strategy. And then the audience. How many, you have to know how many will participate in the face-to-face versus the online scenario. You need to determine if you can manage both groups. It has to be realistic. So we need to make sure that we have enough personnel also. To be honest, I have utilized like students, lab assistants to really make it work. And the students are really more than happy to also assist with the setup if need be. Consider also the recording, especially for your asynchronous group. So it has to be good that they will experience the same experience that the live participants or the synchronous participants have engaged in. When presenting, you must pay attention to both the type of the delivery and the technology that you will be using. So we have to look at all of those again as platforms, requirements, and such. The device needs. So I think these are all we're all familiar with. Like, will you be using PCs, laptops, mobile devices? Personally, I have used one laptop or PC and a mobile device because we teach a lot of laboratories and I move around a lot. So the mobile device is pretty, I can carry it with me or the assistant can carry it even if I'm moving around. Microphones, I prefer the hands-free type. Speakers, I prefer the Bluetooth type. I have noticed it to be with less feedback or less echoing for whatever reason. Our Wi-Fi has to be very stable, especially I put it in here. If you're using an online platform, you need to look at the participants. So for the participants who are in your classroom or who are participating live versus those participants who are in the online situation, you need to consider if they can hear one another. So if there's going to be a lot of collaboration amongst those two groups, then I usually recommend that they also have the live participants have their own laptops with them so they can hear each other, so they can have their personal speakers and then headphones. Or again, if it's not going to be a whole lot of collaboration or participation, it could just be one speaker that everyone can hear. Personal needs. You might want to try to get to the session early to assess for any technical difficulties, so you can again plan and have a backup, determine if assistance are needed to manage the activity, and really be truthful to yourself. No, so we sometimes it's not possible to be for an activity to be handled by just one person, so you might need to ask the assistance of another. What are the challenges that I encountered? Sometimes it's very difficult, okay, truthfully, to engage everyone, like both those in the online and then those in the in-person participation, because sometimes you start talking to the in person and then you forget the online participants, or sometimes you're looking at your camera for the online participants, then you're really forgetting the ones they're live. So I think it's a matter of setting up the camera in such a way that it's not right in front of you, so it's a little bit farther, so then you're looking at the audience in front of you, and at the same time the camera for those in the online participation. Of course, technical glitches are very common. So the echoing or the feedbacking, sometimes the speaker wouldn't work, the audio, the microphone, these are all common issues, but can be avoided if we do a testing, okay, prior to the event. So that way you will already know what problems you are bound to encounter. And the third one that I thought about is overwhelming at times, and this is the truth. So sometimes on the part of the speaker and the person assisting with the technical components, as you are already speaking and at the same time you're making sure that everything is working technology-wise, making sure that everyone is able to engage and making sure that everyone is getting the maximum and a good experience out of that HyFlex strategy. Now, what are the benefits? So people, again, can choose their preferred attendance. This one is very useful for us, people who may be on quarantine. And this is not just for students, also for our faculty members. They do not have to miss a meeting. You don't even have to do a makeup. You don't have to meet with a faculty member who missed your meeting just because they were on quarantine. So I'll have some examples later on. And also for, let's say, level 2 or level 3 categories, then if we have a limited number of participants allowed in a classroom or in a room setting, then this is a very good strategy for us because it will allow lesser people inside the room, and it promotes that social distancing. All right, so I have some samples of, when I use the HyFlex delivery. So so far, these are the common ones we have used it for: workshops, graduation, team building, lab classes, our board exam, Thanksgiving, and then as for faculty meetings. Now, I would like to apologize in advance because I did not fully take pictures of all the camera setup and speaker setup when these were done. So I kind of didn't realize that I would be invited to share my experiences. So I'll just try to kind of do some point pointers and such like that. All right. This was the one that I was like, this was the one that I said on during my beginning slide or my introduction. This speaker, hold on a minute. Let me go ahead and use my laser pointer. Okay. So this is our speaker right here. She's a Pilates instructor, physical therapy alumni, and she's got Pilates certification. And she really didn't want to just present to, I guess, like in a webinar, because Pilates again is very engaged. So what we did is like, this is her as well. So she's like, showing her technique. She's in her clinic and she's got her camera set up. As you can see right here, we have like, various participations. So we have people that participated online. So these are these people. And then also at the department, we have setup. We are the ones who were participating live. With this scenario, I have one computer set up and an camera. So like that's the camera that's taking this picture or this live picture or video here. Okay, so I only have one laptop that has an attachment for a speaker, and we attach it to our big speaker so we can hear it, and then also another camera that shows this one. So this is right here. Sorry, it's like it might be very small. Okay, and again, these are our students, faculty members who participated from the comforts of their home. So this is as early as August of 2020. So as you guys can see, like we were already doing this like even only a few months after the thick of COVID. Okay, so this was part of our founders celebration. We utilize a similar strategy. So this is during our May 2021 college graduation. Some faculty and staff participated live. So you can see here, we are here. And on the background there, this is one of our faculty, Ms. Claire Salera. On her background, that's our podium. Sorry, that is not well seen, but there's a podium on her back there. One computer was used to focus on the speaker on the podium, and then we have another computer that is showing the faculty when we're sitting. Now with this setup, we have each faculty member with a laptop, because we wanted to see also what each students who are in the comforts of their home are doing, or they also like they did their speeches, their graduate speech, their prayers and such like that. So the graduates got to perform right here is their hooding ceremony. It's this is their home, so that's the parents, and then they took pictures with their parents, and then so we pretty much really got to do what we would do in a live or a face-to-face graduation. So it was very meaningful for them. I thought that we made it work for them, and for the PT students, that hooding ceremony is a big thing. They really want that hooding. So, and we made it work. And I think it was like really, really worth our while with all the setup and such. This one is a team building event. So this was facilitated by our guidance counselor, Ma'am Jessica Kitani. This was a yoga session in June of 2021. So in this setup, Ma'am Jing was on the front. I don't know if you guys can see it. This is her right here. So she's on the front, and we have, again, one laptop, which was connected to the Zoom account, and then also projecting on our white projector screen. And then there's a camera in front of her, and then another camera. We actually used another laptop because we have another camera facing us. So this would be us right here. So we were live again. We were in one of our lecture rooms. So we did our yoga mat setup, and these are like our faculty members. So that's Miss Min, I think, and Sir Saiflor there. They were participating from the comforts of their home. So it was very nice. So everyone got to do the yoga, the team building, and we did some activities and games and such, with them being some people being live, and then the others, well, we're both live, one online and then the other at the facility. All right. I think someone is going to discuss high flex related to instruction, but I wanted to briefly share my setup here. So this workshop was completed last September of 2021. Um, in this scenario, of course, I'm live. We have lab assistants who are live, lab preceptors who are live, and some students. So this was the time that we were already allowed to do face-to-face. And then the other students and other PT professionals attended online. So this one is similar setup, but instead of two laptops, I had one laptop that was facilitating the Zoom and the projection. And then I also have one iPad. So the iPad is carried by our lab preceptor, and she pretty much followed me around as I showed the strategy to the students. And on the same note, we actually live streamed this in our private Facebook page, and people were able to watch there as well if they're not able to participate live. So asynchronously, they could watch it. And another this is our group of interns. So one facility or affiliation center that we are in partnership with heard about this thing, and so they actually participated also, or they requested participation. So they also attended either asynchronously or online synchronous. So it was very nice. And this one was January of 2022. So this is our board exam Thanksgiving. So after our board examinees passed their exams, so the board passers here participated live, faculty and staff were live. We invited a few students, so primarily interns, they were live. The SU Church was online, so that's them. So we projected them on the screen. And then the other students, parents, relatives participated online on asynchronous mode. So synchronous, not asynchronous. Okay, so on a same timeline. So, but again, because of the level 2 alert at that time, we're not able to put that many people inside the room. So the parents and the relatives and the guardians, they participated through Zoom online. And faculty meetings, I have no pictures, but we have done many faculty meetings in the HighFlex strategy. So same thing. So we have the big projector. So this is an example, but instead of like that big screen, we don't have that at Silliman. We use a projector. So we perform a lot of like HighFlex meetings. Wherein I'm usually live because I like coming to the office, and then our staff and some of our faculty also comes. But some faculty, they have the option to participate in an online setting. So the setup here is like we have a Bluetooth with a speaker, and so then people can hear what people in the Zoom are saying, and at the same time they can hear what people who are participating live are saying. All right. And just to on a very last note, I think Doc Dave mentioned like the cost to technology. I don't think it's really that costly because if you would Shopee became my friend throughout this pandemic. There's so many like cameras, Bluetooth speakers, like headsets. I used to order through the business office, and no offense, but it took a long time to process all of those requests. And I realized though that there are many gadgets and devices that is under 500 pesos. And so I'm able to buy, like, just order it myself. And then I just do request for payment as long as it's reasonable and it's really required or needed. And so we are able to set up these things with minimal cost. So I don't think it would require a whole lot of like elaborate setup, because you will be able to achieve the same outcome without like the expensive devices or the expensive gadgets. So to end this, so the past 2 years, we became super creative, super resilient, super fast learners, and most importantly, we became catalysts for necessary change. HighFlex delivery is much easier than the challenges we have overcome in the past. So we can do this. A journey indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc Lily. So she's such an inspiration, especially to the administrators. Not to mention that she's really way ahead of everyone when it comes to implementing things like the people around were still trying to coin what HighFlex really is and trying to really do what HighFlex is. But as early as 2020, Doc Lily has already been doing HighFlex, no? So it's like natural to her to be doing HighFlex right now. So thank you so much, Doc Lily. She has been a champion when it comes to technology integration in education. So next is we have another.
Ma'am Alfie,
Yes.
excuse me, sorry. I'm not sure if Doc Dave mentioned. I would be happy to answer a few questions already because I
Okay.
have to leave at 3:30 for another engagement.
All
If there
right.
are
So
questions.
yes, if you have questions for Doc Lily, because she will have an appointment by 3:30, you can you could just raise your hand if you'd want to ask her a question, or you could just type in our chat box if you have questions for her. Okay. Okay, so it's more of really appreciating. So we have already here. Okay, so it's from Sir Jasper Katan. I'm wondering to what extent would be the recalibration of the syllabus to facilitate HighFlex learning. I am just anxious that in our attempt to facilitate all modalities, teachers might be required to develop differentiated approaches for one lesson, which may be laborious. So we could also ask Doc Lily for her insight on this one.
To be honest with you, when we were asked to recalibrate our syllabus, was that in 2020? I think our department probably did not have that much of a difficulty because we were one of the few that were already doing hybrid and so online versus like we were full face to face, but we really utilized like Soul a lot. So we just did a lot, like not a lot, like a bit of tweaking on the words and terminologies, and that's how I'm seeing the recalibration to the HighFlex strategy. I don't think we would have to have three different sets of syllabi for the online versus the hybrid versus the HighFlex. So I think one syllabus would already be enough. You just need to word it in certain way that it could also serve as your catch-up plan. So first and foremost, your department would have to come together and really kind of look into like let's say subject A. Is this subject A going to be now be delivered in a hybrid or a HighFlex scenario, or back to the traditional, no? So medyo I think yun yung medyo question, because if medyo dun kayo sa traditional, then I think you would have to recalibrate and make another syllabus kasi syempre iba yung full traditional classroom versus HighFlex or hybrid. So I don't know if I'm the best person to ask because kasi kami talagang mix na talaga kami. So we don't have to recalibrate much because we already do both.
Thank you for that one, Doc Lily. Again, I think there's a follow-up question from Sir Jasper. Sir Jasper.
Hi, Ma'am Alfie. Mayong hapon. Doc Lily,
Mayong
good afternoon,
hapon.
everyone.
Good
Just a
afternoon,
follow-up
sir.
question kay, just to explain what I'm trying to ask, not necessarily to develop three different syllabi for three modalities, but and also Ma'am Lily mentioned na what if we opted for a face-to-face, or what if a lesson will be better for online. That's a concern for me nga we have to decide pa di ay nga this particular lesson will be better off with face to face, and then the next lesson will be better for online, which will pose a challenge kay again I'll have to decide pa which modality would fit first. And thinking about high flex learning, how would the university design it in such a way that we will no longer think about which better modality should be utilized in delivering a particular lesson? Like, regardless of what lesson, students who can come here face to face, and students who opt online learning, and students who are probably working or have limited internet connectivity can opt to participate in asynchronous learning, can all together learn from one single syllabus with a high flex friendly approach. So mo nang ako ang gitry og ASBA, not necessarily developing 3 different syllabi. Kana mo ra siya integrated.
Yes.
Yes.
I,
Sorry. Go ahead, Doc Lily.
Yes, I maybe we can ask also like Doc Dave when he mentioned about the recalibration. But I think though I believe that the outcome should be the same, right? Regardless of what setting you'll be delivering it. I guess like with your students. As far as having to decide now, I don't think that it has to be set in a black and white situation. Like for example, this is just ours, okay? So just want to share our way of doing things. So let's say you have learning let's say course outcome number 1, for them to be able to evaluate, use certain tools. We don't necessarily put like face-to-face laboratory. It's not like that. So we would put like, let's say, laboratory engagement, online delivery. So you have like multiple strategies in there that can be mixed in. So that way people are not just how do you say that? You're not just like very limited to that one strategy that you put in there, because we know naman that teaching can be multiple strategies, and then also one teacher might have a different strategy, right? So sometimes making it like more of a bullet points and list might make that syllabus more open for changes throughout the course. So I'm not sure if that kind of makes sense.
Yes, to add to that, I think Sir Dave will just answer more of that one, Sir Jasper, later on after our other speakers will be done for the open forum. I think Sir Dave will address that one first. Okay, so other questions for Doc Lily? All right, so Doc Lily, thank you very much. That was really very encouraging, especially for those administrators out there. The activities that you have actually practiced using HyFlex is really fabulous in a sense, because you have really done it even without the implementation of HyFlex. Thank you very much, Doc Lily.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, so moving forward, we have a sharer her and here, and she is going to share her teaching experience when it comes to limited face-to-face. She's actually a faculty of the Institute of Clinical Laboratory Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Ms. Jeffrey K. Pandak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible po?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Maayong hapon sa tanan. I hope everyone is well. I'd like to thank first Dr. Dave and the SOUL team for the invitation to speak this afternoon. So I was tasked to share a bit of our experiences when we had our limited face-to-face classes for the MedTech, specifically for our level 4 MedTech students. Let me first share my screen. For a while lang po. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So once again, good afternoon. I am Jeffrey K. Pandak, level 4 a faculty member handling level 4 students here at the Institute of Clinical Laboratory Sciences for the BS Medical Technology program. So last semester, we were able to do a limited face-to-face class for our level 4 students only. That was determined by the entire faculty members na i-prioritize muna si level 4 students. I will be giving you a short background first before I give you a bit of the challenges and the interventions that we did for our face-to-face class engagement last semester. So just a quick background. This was already mentioned by Dr. Dave early in today's session that the Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Health released the Joint Memorandum Circular number 2021-0001 on the guidelines and the gradual reopening of campuses of higher education institutions for limited face-to-face classes during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the Joint Memorandum Circular number 2021-001 enumerated 6 priority health programs that were first allowed for limited face-to-face class engagement. Now, so my talk this afternoon will focus more on how we did our face-to-face classes. We basically had the actual face-to-face class with a mix of online class during the quarantine period of our students. So with the Joint Memorandum Circular, medical technology has been identified as one of the 6 priority health programs, together with nursing, medicine, dentistry, I think pharmacy, among others. So we applied for limited face-to-face class, and fortunately, we were given a clearance by CHED, DOH, and the local IATF to hold limited face-to-face classes, which we started last July of 2021. Okay, so just to define what limited face-to-face classes is, this was also already mentioned by Dr. Dave. It pertains to restricting the number of students to attend face-to-face classes in campus in any given day based on the degree program. So those are the 6 priority health programs. If we base it on the Joint Memorandum Circular 001, but today I think our recent Joint Memorandum Circular already has allowed for the resumption of face-to-face classes for all programs. So based on the degree programs or course they are enrolled in, cyclical student or shifting rotating schedule, and physical distancing and other health and safety protocols. So for our limited face-to-face class engagement, we welcomed a total of 194 level 4 students. So that's quite a lot of students. It has really been a challenge for us to handle these students, especially na we had to abide with the 1.5 meter social distancing. So why these 194 level 4 students? Because we prioritized these students first because they were not able to gain any hands-on laboratory experience. Now, once a medical technology student reaches level 4, it's the level 4 is basically the entire internship program na of like in our curriculum, it's the internship program na. And we we faculty members actually had a meeting on this, and we decided na before we allow these students to go into their clinical rotations, their actual hospital duty, we first have to develop the essential skills that they need for their actual duty. So we had 194 students back then. So we divided the 194 students into 16 blocks with 12 to 13 students each, so as to also comply with the 1.5 meter social distancing requirement prescribed by the Joint Memorandum Circular 2021-001. So that was the only Bible that we had back then. So I think today, with the Joint Memorandum Circular 2021-004, it gives the institutions, the higher education institutions, the freedom to decide kung pila ka students ang ilang i-allow in one group. Now, the Joint Memorandum Circular also prescribed a 4 cyclical and shifting schedules. So what they prescribed was a 4-day actual class plus a 12-day quarantine, or a 4-day class, a limited face-to-face class, plus a 10-day quarantine period. So in our end, we employed the 4-day duty, or 4-day duty wherein the students, the interns reported to the different laboratories here in campus for limited face-to-face classes. And then after their 4-day duty, they had a 10-day quarantine period wherein the students had to perform some virtual activities. We had some case presentations, didactics, pre-conference, post-conference activities, and other online activities that would supplement their learning. So we had the 4-day duty and then 10-day quarantine na cycle. So just to show you a few pictures. So these are some of our interns. Actually, it was a requirement by the Commission on Higher Education and the DOH based on the JMC, the Joint Memorandum Circular, for the students to, of course, constantly observe social distancing, to wear face shields and face masks, specifically N95 or other masks with similar filtering capabilities. But thank God, karon kay wala na tanag face shield. It depends na sa institution. Like in some hospitals karon na we are currently affiliated with, mag-require gihapon sila og face shield. But now dili na kayo strict si face shield. So these were the ingani ang amo ang setup before. In the laboratory, they were of course, to constantly observe the 1.5 meter social distancing and to always wear their complete personal protective equipment inside the laboratories. So again, our limited face-to-face classes were only for the laboratory, in-house laboratory skills immersion. We didn't have face-to-face classes for lecture classes, so more on the laboratory mina aspect, because the goal was really to develop the skills of the interns or our level 4 students before sila muadto sa hospitals. All right, so what were the few challenges that we encountered? We actually encountered a lot, but I would be enumerating mga 3 challenges lang that we experienced, the major challenges that we really experienced while we conducted the limited face-to-face classes last semester. And I will also be sharing with everyone the different the interventions that we did, that we employed for these challenges to mitigate these problems and challenges. Okay, so the first challenge, I think, this is the students and the teachers had limited time, or the students had limited time to perform so many procedures, because for the MedTech Manggod, we have different major subjects, and then each subject na siya laboratory counterpart, and each laboratory counterpart, it will have like a minimum of 10 activities per laboratory subject. So imagine if you have like 6 or 7 subjects, so you should be able to perform like around 70 to 100 na mga laboratory procedures. But we only had limited time to do the tests. Okay, so giunsa siya namo. These are basically some examples of mga laboratory subjects, medtech laboratory subjects that had important activities and procedures that were needed by our interns for their actual face-to-face na in clinical internships sa hospital. So we had clinchem and all the other subjects. So kani siya nga each subject they will have a lot of activities also. So how did we decide on like what activities to give them and what activities to prioritize? So what we did is we only prioritize the delivery of essential activities to meet the required competencies and learning outcomes as stipulated under CMO number 13 series of 2017. So this is our CMO 13 series of 2017 contains the policy standards and guidelines for medical technology education. So from that list of competencies and learning outcomes, we used those to decide on what activities to prioritize and to give first to our students given the limited time that we had. So this is normally to be ideally the different activities and procedures for all these laboratory subjects in the MedTech curriculum. This should be delivered to the students for one entire year, but we only had like 4 to 5 months to allow our students to learn these procedures. So gamay lang yun ang time with so many procedures to perform. So we only prioritize, again, the learning, the delivery of essential activities to meet the required competencies and learning outcomes. So what are these learning outcomes? I will not be like explaining these in detail, but my point is we use these competencies as our guide for the identification of the priority activities that we should be giving to our students. So that's it. Now, the second major problem that we encountered was that we were able to encounter a lot of interruptions and delays in our program. These were basically brought by COVID-19 related na mga delays and of course by Typhoon Odette. So we were all well, at least on my end, like I was really greatly affected by all these mga interruptions and causes for interruptions and delays. So for COVID-19, ang problem namo back then was that there were a number of students that were that tested positive for COVID-19, and so we had to quarantine identify the first generation contact, quarantine for a few days, and then wait for these individuals to be cleared. So I think for last semester, we had like 10 to 15 students who tested positive, and each student had, first generation, second generation contact. So challenge siya because the delivery of our scheduled activities, our already tight schedule in the delivery of our activities was yet again, tested, and kinahanglan na mo siya i-modify constantly. And of course, Typhoon Odette, just when we thought now we were about to finish the semester, last December 16, Typhoon Odette hit the province, and then our scheduled activities after December 16 were all, affected by that calamity. So what were the interventions that we did for these types of delays? Now, we implemented the learning continuity and contingency plans that the Commission on Higher Education asked us to prepare. So I think Dr. Dave earlier mentioned about these learning continuity plans or contingency plans. So it was actually a requirement. We were actually required to come up with such so that should any suspension, should any delay happen, like ready na mo implements among contingency plans. So what did we do? We identified, of course, the activities or laboratory exercises that may be delivered virtually. So although we were able to the purpose was really to develop the skills of the interns, of the students, via face-to-face na learning. But may a few activities na na-identify na pwede lang dahil siya ma-deliver virtually. So we identified those activities and then we delivered those activities virtually while waiting for the clearance for us to resume. We also made some adjustments in our schedule. Like instead of having a half-day, 4-day duty, one schedule modification that we did before was to have a whole day, 4-day duty for one batch, and then another batch will have another 4-day, full day duty, something like that. We also made some modifications in the assessment parameters and requirements for the students. Like we no longer required for the students to have a practical examination for this activity because lisod na sa schedule, wala na gipa-submit og some outputs because of the time constraints brought about by these interruptions and delays. Okay, so I think what I really want to emphasize in this one is always be ready to have the learning continuity and contingency plans, just so you will be ready to implement these should any interruption or delay happen. Now, another important challenge that I personally was able to experience, we had a problem in the monitoring of our students and in providing support among students because as you might have known, whenever a person tests positive for COVID, kinahanglan siya i-monitor, identify the contacts, and then refer the contacts for swabbing or refer the contacts to the different health units and let the health units assess if kinahanglan ba siya i-swab or quarantine lang, some sort, okay? So for this challenge na atay tulo ka buok, of course, I've mentioned COVID, which is really quite challenging. So we were, based on the Joint Memorandum Circular, we are to constantly monitor our students for any COVID-19 symptom and exposure. So we did that. How did we do the monitoring for COVID-19 symptom and exposure? So remember the 16 blocks that we had? Each block was assigned an advisor, and then the advisor monitored the overall health and movement history of the interns via online health declaration form. So we had a Google form, and then the student will have to fill out the form and submit every day. So the teacher, the advisor, will have to check every day the responses of his or her advisor and then check if naabay symptoms si intern or naabay significant exposure sa probable or confirmed COVID-19 case. So that's what really was so challenging about this one. And it's good though that the faculty members that I worked with last semester were really so active in this in this regard. So active kay sila sa pag-monitor sa mga interns, sa pag-identify sa mga close contacts if ever mag-positive. Active also in endorsing the interns to the different health units, okay, and also providing assistance to the interns or to the student whenever the intern will be isolated in a specific isolation facility when an intern tests positive. So next is in the performance monitoring. So the advisors conducted weekly grade conferences, so the students were made fully aware of their scores and feedback from other clinical instructors, because they will have to go to another clinical instructor who will be handling another subject, another set of laboratory activities for this certain block. So kinahanglan pud sila whenever there are like feedbacks or significant na mga comments from other clinical instructors, the interns were also made fully aware of these. And of course, sa ilang grades, scores, they were also constantly updated sa ilang standing. Okay, and I think kaning last, the emotional and medical support, we had a few students who really had mental health issues. We also had students na we brought to the emergency room of SUMC because of some medical condition. This is really quite challenging. Why? Because you sometimes the instructor will have to do these things outside office hours, and it's not paid. Like voluntary lang siya, because once you are an advisor of a certain intern with a certain problem, you will always have to give your support to that intern or monitor that intern. So advisors and our coordinator referred students in need of emotional support to the guidance counselor. So we were really so grateful for the help of Ma'am Jessica Kitane, our guidance counselor, for all the help sa counsel and sa counseling and sa provide sa emotional support. And those in need of medical assistance, they were referred to the Office of Student Services. So when we had some emergencies back then, like I learned how to, talk to, coordinate with Dr. Edna Kalingasyon and Ma'am Christy of the OSS para makaprovide me sa appropriate assistance and ma-refer ang student sa OSS for assistance and additional support. So these were 3 of the challenges that we experienced. What else? I just would like to share, these are the active faculty members who were part of the limited face-to-face class last semester for our level 4 medtech students. I'm so grateful for them because they really helped in the monitoring, especially yun in the monitoring of our students, and then also in giving some emotional support to our students. And although last semester was really so challenging for everyone, especially for our students, very challenging yun siya. But I am so grateful to these individuals for all their help. So to end, I would like to leave you with this one. Improvement usually means doing something that we have never done before. So I actually did not realize na I only realized na makahimo day ko ingani I was never able to do something like this until I was already faced with such situation. So as we have hopefully our high-flex face-to-face classes or limited face-to-face classes next semester, let's all just don't be discouraged, because parang sa start lang yun siya, as actually challenging siya, but once you are already immersed into that certain situation, maka-find rin yung taong ways how to make everything work. Okay, just like what Dr. Lily has mentioned earlier. So those are the different challenges and the interventions that we had last semester. I hope that you, my dear colleagues, were able to get something from it. And I thank you all for listening. Thank you. Ma'am, you are on mute po.
Okay, again, thank you very much, Ms. Jeffrey. That was really very inspiring, and we highly appreciate how detailed you were in all of those things that a teacher has to be responsible when it comes to doing limited face-to-face. Because for those who have not yet experienced limited face-to-face, it's part of the requirement that first the teacher has to decide if he or she has to go limited face-to-face with a course. And the second one is you have to do full monitoring of the class. That's why kinahanglan i-monitor ang students, ang ilang health, and so on and so forth. No, so it's really not just it's really something that we really have to plan out. No, the contingency plans and all that. No, it's really confirmed in all of with our two speakers that we really have to have those backups when it comes to doing limited face-to-face. So you can ask your questions to Ms. Jeffrey later on when we are done with the rest of our sharers. So thank you very much, Ms. Jeffrey. Point we have actually two students who will be sharing their experience also in doing limited face-to-face. They are senior students of the College of Nursing, and they will be sharing to us their experience as students in limited face-to-face. So please help me welcome Ms. Rachel Lynn N. Agravante and Ms. Sophia Marie Bravador. Ladies.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Ma'am, can we share our screen?
Yes, yes.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ma'ams and sirs. While we are working on our PowerPoint, okay, it's there now. All right, so for today's sharing, we will be tasked to share about our experience for limited face-to-face classes as students. So just to give a brief background, in the College of Nursing, we started our limited face-to-face last May 2021 for our skills laboratory or skills lab. But then there was a short interruption because some of our faculty and our students acquired COVID-19. So there was recalibration. And then eventually by September 2021, we were on blended learning wherein we met when we did limited face-to-face for our skills laboratory, as well as our clinical rotations in the hospital. But of course, before we delve further into that, we'd like to introduce ourselves once again. I'm Sophia Gravador, a level 4 nursing student, and alongside with me for today is...
I am Rachel Lynn Agravante, also a level 4 nursing student.
All right. We'd like to thank, of course, our Dean, Dr. Teresa Ginoo, and of course, Dr. Dave Marshall for allowing us chance to share our experience, this groundbreaking moment in our student life. All right. So for your convenience, we have here an outline of what we are going to share for this afternoon.
So for today, Today, we will be discussing more about our preparation for face-to-face classes as students. And then we also have following COVID-19 protocols that were established by our college. We will also share our face-to-face experiences, both in the classroom setting, as well as during our related learning experience whenever we go on duty in the hospitals. And then we also have our mitigation of challenges, as well as the lessons learned. So we will go through each of them with our presentation today. So how did we prepare for our face-to-face classes? So initially, all of us were excited and nervous at the same time when we were given the go signal to have our face-to-face classes, primarily because I know, and I think all of us can relate to it when we say that online classes have been a struggle for all of us, not only for students, but as well as the teachers. There
really is a need for us to have a human interaction. So when we were given the go signal, syempre, all of us were excited, but at the same time nervous because there is still the fear of COVID-19. So we would like to give a few tips how we prepared ourselves as students during for our face-to-face classes rather. So here we have the mental and physical preparation. So for the mental aspect of the preparation, we created a mindset that we have to be cautious whenever we go to our classrooms or to the hospital for duty. We always assume that everything that we touch is contaminated because knowing COVID-19, it can be spread through droplets and even just a simple cough or sneeze. The virus will kanang stay at the surface for quite a time. So we had to assume that everything we touch is contaminated. So we have to make sure that we always carry our alcohol spray bottles with us so we can sanitize our hands and even wash our hands as well to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And then another aspect was our physical preparation. So since we had to go on duty to hospitals, taking care of sickly patients, we do not want to be the source of infection for these patients. So we had to make sure that we had to be healthy, to take our vitamins every day, and more importantly, get enough rest before and after our duty days. So when we had our face-to-face classes, it wasn't just, hala, magkita namin sa akong classmates and sa among teachers, but we also had to remember that the primary reason for us why we had our limited face-to-face classes is for us to hone our skills in preparation for our duties hospital and in the future when we become nurses. And then another would be we had to follow COVID-19 protocols. So in our college, there were things that we had to observe. Well, of course, we had to wear our face masks. And even when the rest of Dumaguete City and the Philippines were no longer wearing face shields, every time we had to go to MMS and OVY, we still had to wear our face shields whenever we had our return demonstrations, of course, to avoid the spread of infection. And we also had to observe this as well whenever we go to the hospital. And even until now, na Dumaguete is already alert level 1, whenever we go on duty sa hospital, we still have to carry our face shields with us whenever we interact with our patients. During our face-to-face classes, a few things that our college has observed was not having the air conditioners on. We had to open our windows and turn on the electric fans whenever we had our classes there. Primarily, we had our limited face-to-face classes in the college only for return demonstration of procedures that we had to perform in the hospital. So only the skills laboratory aspect lang of the courses that we had to take. And another would be controlling the number of students inside the classroom. So for our return demonstration last semester, there were only 2 students allowed to enter inside the classroom and 1 clinical instructor. So for example, our group, we were 16 students in total. So for this week, for example, there are 2 students that have to come in every hour. So different students from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, and so on and so forth. So there were kanang dili jud kaayo mi maka-interact with each other because limited ang among time, and we are always encouraged na after our classes inside MMS and OVY, we had to go home immediately to avoid the spread of infection again. And then our teachers also had to constantly remind us to avoid communal eating or going out after our duty because, for example, the hospital is, again, there are many infections there present. So we don't also want to be the source whenever we go outside. So we are discouraged from going out wearing our scrub suits, especially after our duty sa hospital. And we are also encouraged na to limit whenever we go out para we wouldn't be the source of infection for our patients. And I think it's also good na we are constantly reminded by that so that if ever in the case that a student presents any signs or symptoms of COVID-19, the student will be able to determine or contact immediately the people he or she were with. And then in the event that a student does present signs or symptoms of COVID-19, our college has established the SUCN COVID-19 Crisis Committee. So here we have a visual presentation of our crisis committee in the College of Nursing. So our SUCN COVID-19 crisis director is our dean, Dr. Theresa A. Ginoo. And then we also have the following people that are members of this committee. So we have the safety enforcer to assist the safety officer in enforcing the health protocols. We have the information officers. We have our dean, Dr. Theresa A. Ginoo, and her assistant, Ma'am Lynn Grace Mamhot rather. We also have our contact tracer, Dr. Freslin Limsaco. To coordinate contact tracing team per level, we have the level coordinator and advisor, our liaison officer, Dr. Theoros Bustillo, and then our social support team, Ma'am Martas and Ma'am Marnasa Campoy. So if a student shows any signs or symptoms, he or she should contact his or her level coordinator and advisor so that his or her quarantine period or schedule of swabbing will be coordinated na with our faculty, and also for easy contact tracing as well. And here we have our face-to-face class experience. So in this slide, you can see our picture. So initially, as mentioned before, we had our limited face-to-face classes in May 2021. However, it was not fully continued or fully implemented as some students and faculty got infected by COVID-19. So personally, for my experience, it was great to be able to transcend from the virtual setting to a physical setting so that I was able to see my classmates and our teachers. However, we still had to be mindful with our interactions and maintain social distancing. So there were no hugging, there were no bisag a simple high five, dili pwede. And our limited face-to-face classes primarily focused on return demonstrations, while our exams were still held online, as well as our lectures. So in the College of Nursing, we actually observed a few changes from the pre-pandemic situation. So before we enter the building, we had to log in sa logbook, put our name and the reason why we had to go sa college. And then when we go upstairs, you had to observe na right side ra ang agian. So if your classroom was sa left side, you had to go around pa para makaabot ka sa left side, which I think was effective na people would not block the way kay magtabi or magchika. Also a great way to for us to be reminded na ma-prevent ang spread of infection. So next here we have the different pictures of us again during our face-to-face classes. So we have here a picture of us after our return demonstration of our basic life support and advanced cardiac life support. So I think one of the good things that made an effect on us students when we had our face-to-face classes is that we were able to apply the things that we learned in our lectures to practice, especially that our course focuses more on skills when providing care to our patients. So for us in our end, it's very hard to have imaginary patients. So being able to apply them in practice or even during simulations also helps us hone these skills. And we wanted to document our experience now because we are very privileged to have limited face-to-face classes. So moving forward, we have Sophia to continue the presentation.
All right, thank you, Ray. So for this portion, we're actually going to share about our 2021 experience for face-to-face duty. It's really a big leap and it was a life-changing moment for us, considering that we had to go on duty with minimum public health protocols in mind. And it helped that our clinical instructors were very, since we already went through our 2021 duty, now we're going through our 2022 duty. For this year in particular, or actually at present, we're now on alert level 1. So there is somewhat leniency already in the protocols. We still have our face masks, we still have our face shields with us, but we no longer use them as much. Considering that we are already on alert level 1 and most of our patients are vaccinated, and actually most of the people around us are already vaccinated. So there is immunity in that. We still do hand washing and we still keep with us handy alcohol. But this time we are a smaller group. Instead of a group of 18, we're now a group of 11 because everyone has to go on limited face-to-face, or everyone has to go on actual duty. So now we are really knee-deep into our actual duty because we're no longer doing the virtual setup that much. So the only instances wherein we have to do virtual setup is when we would have lectures, big lecture discussions, or when we have to discuss researches, or when we have to discuss the papers that we made during duty. So those are the only instances wherein we would have to do virtual duty. But now we can really be immersed in our skills acquisition because we are already in that setup. Okay, so moving forward, as mentioned, we will be now talking about our challenges. These sets of challenges are more a mixture of emotional challenges as well as physical challenges of going into a limited face-to-face duty. All right, so we've divided our challenges into 3 parts. So the first part would be the challenges we encountered prior to attending the face-to-face class. The first one would, of course, be travel and lodging. Not all of us are from Dumaguete, and in fact, Rachel is not from Dumaguete, she is from San Carlos. So there were concerns even when we received the final news of us having face-to-face classes, because we had to arrange bookings, we had to arrange lodgings, and good for us level 4 nursing students that we already are familiar with Dumaguete, and we knew of the boarding houses and the lodging houses that we could contact immediately right away, because we were already acquainted with the city. But what about those who have not set foot yet in Dumaguete? It can be a challenge for them because it was even a challenge for us who were already acquainted with the city. And then another challenge prior to attending the face-to-face classes was that the health protocols can be a bit overwhelming. We were given an orientation by our college as to what we were going to do when we have face-to-face classes, what we were going to do after face-to-face classes or during face-to-face classes. And even if our teachers gave us a very comprehensive presentation, it took us time before we were able to process that this was happening and that these were the health protocols that we had to strictly follow when we were doing face-to-face. So it was very helpful that we had early preparation and that reinforcement of our instructions as well as protocols were constantly done by our advisors. So in fact, we listed that as one of the mitigation processes that perhaps our teachers can also look back on. Open communication channels is very important because, again, the process of us going and transitioning from virtual duty into actual duty was sort of emotional, actually, and was sort of heavy for us. So it really helped that our teachers were supportive and that they really proliferated an open communication line. So every now and then they would ask us, "Oh, are you already here in Dumaguete?" In my CI group, those of us who were not from Dumaguete, we were asked as to when we would arrive in Dumaguete, how we would travel to Dumaguete, where we were staying, and all of those other details with regards to going into the face-to-face classes. And then we move forward into our challenges during actual face-to-face classes. Now, when we first did our face-to-face classes in WBT, we were instructed that, of course, we had to do triage. And this is part of the university's COVID crisis committee protocols. in terms of the face-to-face classes. The triaging itself is not a challenge, given that it's part of the protocol, and it's a means for the college and the university to contact trace and to also make sure that everyone is all right. But the process itself can be long. I remember when we first had our face-to-face classes, there were more or less 4 of us who were in the triage station. We were waiting for our turn and we had to observe social distancing. And I was already worried because even if I did go to Silliman around like 15 minutes earlier than my schedule, I had to extend and I had to wait for more or less 5 minutes before I was able to do the triaging and before I was able to finish up filling the form. So perhaps ways forward for that would be to also ensure that us students really go to school extra early. And then another thing that happened when we did our actual face-to-face classes, there were new routes that were implemented in our college. So there was a certain route as to where we could enter, where we could exit. And this was something that we weren't used to, because prior to the pandemic, we were so used to the idea that we could just enter anywhere, go anywhere, we can walk anywhere we want to. But when we had the face-to-face classes, we could not do that. For the purpose of health protocols as well. So really, we had to be acquainted with the environment once we were on campus. But also another thing is it helped that we had the orientation with our teachers, because they also gave us pictures as to where we should go once we enter the campus and all of the new routes that we had to take note of. So again, early preparation and still making the presentation and making the orientation for face-to-face as detailed as possible really helped us in comprehending and understanding that this was going to be the new setup for us students. And then moving forward to another set of challenges. This one in particular, this was a very adamant or a very challenging portion for us students, because rooms were no longer air conditioned. And our scrub suit in particular, it has a thick cloth. And usually our schedule for face-to-face classes would be in the hours of 10 to 12, or rather my experience was during those hours. So the weather is very humid, it's very hot, and there are no longer air-conditioned units turned on. And we could not turn them on because, of course, we would not want spread droplets in the classroom. And we could not also use fans, paper fans or mga abanicos, because, of course, that would also be a risk for spreading droplets. So a ways forward to this was we brought tissues with us, or if not tissues, handkerchief, so that we can get rid of the sweat that's happening. And we really made sure that we were calm inside the classroom and that we were not overly ambulating ourselves, so that we won't be producing sweat and the room will not get any hotter. Another challenge was that the classrooms have person limit capacities. As mentioned by Rachel earlier, our room, or rather our classrooms, could only accommodate around 3 people. But I was also able to experience wherein our room was only able to accommodate around 2 people at a time. So it was a challenge, because we went into face-to-face thinking that we will be able to see our classmates, our section, our CI groups. But in turn, we only were able to see just 2 of them at a time, or 1 of them at a time. So it still goes back to mental preparation and really making sure that we have a good idea of what the setup would look like when we were already in actual face-to-face. And then the last one is observing proper health protocols for more than an hour. Since we were in online distance learning for about a year or so, we were so used to how we would set up ourselves in the online distance learning, which is something like this. No face masks, not observing the proper health protocols, because considering that we're just alone in our rooms, in our respective homes. But for face-to-face classes, there were times where we had to put on face masks for more than an hour, or that we had to put on face shields for more than an hour. And in fact, in our duty, we had to put on face masks and face shields for more or less 5 hours. So there was an adjustment period that we really had to go through physically, because we had to acquaint ourselves with the feeling of having face masks. We had to acquaint ourselves with constantly constantly putting on alcohol, and that we also had to acquaint ourselves with doing hand washing, which are stuff that we usually don't do on a regular basis. So a ways forward to that was that we really just had to remember the rationality of the health protocols, and eventually it becomes part of our routine as students that, oh, we had to observe this, and that we had to also wear face masks all the time and such. Okay, now moving forward to our last set of challenges. Sorry, there's also one more actual challenge during face-to-face. This is on delays and interruptions. So for example, when we had when there was this instance, our clinical instructor had or was in contact with a COVID-19 patient, of course, we had to reschedule our face-to-face classes with her, our skills lab simulation with her. So that's when perhaps the mention of recalibration of the pedagogy, as well as reorienting ourselves with the setup that we would want. I think that's the portion where this can be applied to. But basically, our clinical instructors, what they did was they utilized the virtual duty. So after acquainting ourselves with us being in the face-to-face setup for Skills Lab, we had to again go back to virtual duty, and we had to again utilize and maximize those duty days where we had to do it virtually. So our instructors had to think of nursing activities again that they would have to implement for us to be able to utilize those days that we could not see each other physically. It was hard, but it helped that our clinical instructors were again very supportive, and they were emotionally open for all of the delays and interruptions that we had. And in fact, I remember my clinical instructor, every time there would be a delay in her schedule, she would always ask us, "Oh, are you okay? Like, how do you feel about the interruption? Like, do you feel disappointed? Like, what are your thoughts on this?" So our CIs would really make an effort to have dialogue with the students so that everyone can be transparent with what they're feeling. And in turn, it made us feel comfortable and secure as well as students, because it made us think that, oh, our clinical instructors really do care about us, and that they really do care not only about our physical safety, physical well-being, but more so our academic well-being as students, and that we're not just alone in this journey of transitioning and doing face-to-face classes. Okay, so moving forward to our last set of challenges, I believe, and this is for challenges after face-to-face classes. The first one is, of course, coming in contact with a COVID-19 case. We were able to experience this in our section, wherein our clinical instructor and one classmate of mine came in contact with a COVID-19 case. So there was a halt, and we had to reschedule our simulation. But how that happened basically was our clinical instructor had to inform, of course, the college, and then that classmate of mine was also instructed to contact his respective BHU, and he was, of course, instructed to go into self-quarantine and monitor for the symptoms. But apart from that, again, emotional support was really given, because I remember my classmate telling me na it was such a very hard experience that he had to go through COVID-19 during that time of having face-to-face classes, and that he felt as if he was the reason as to why our face-to-face classes were halted. But then our clinical instructor assured him that it was just a situation that we could not, or it was a situation that perhaps we had to go through so that we can learn more, and we can also we can better our protocols and policies when it comes to actual face-to-face classes. So that kind of positive approach really helped my classmate. And in fact, when I was the one who had COVID already, that classmate of mine also did what my clinical instructor did to him. So in some ways, we were also learning from our clinical instructor, and the emotional support that was provided by our clinical instructor was also displayed to everyone in our group. And then, of course, what would happen if our classmates would manifest COVID-19 during actual or after face-to-face classes? The same system basically goes. They would have to inform our teacher, and we would have to inform our teacher as well, inform our BHU, and again, we would be provided emotional support by our clinical instructors. But there was one thing that we also noticed, because most of the cases that we had whenever our classmates or batchmates would contract COVID-19, it wasn't really because of the actual face-to-face classes, because most of the time they would contract COVID-19 outside the halls of Silliman. So that was also one thing that our college had to consider. That's why they would often give us reminders to not eat in public places, or if we can avoid communal eating as much as possible, then that would be better. So those are some of the stuff that we were able to experience in terms of us contacting COVID-19, or in terms of our classmates contacting COVID-19. And even for those of us who were newly healed from COVID-19, the post-monitoring phase of our clinical instructors are also important as well, because they see to it that even after we're okay, and even after we're already on duty, they would ask us if we're okay, if our families were okay, if we were able to contact OSS for our COVID benefit already, and the like. So our clinical instructors have really provided emotional support, not only pre face-to-face, during face-to-face, but also even after face-to-face. And we feel as if that really helped us as students, and it really helped us move forward into the situation of face-to-face classes. Okay, so with that, there are many lessons that we've learned, but we've only basically summarized it into 4. Okay, so for the first lesson is we are looking at the 3 C's. We named this 3 C's because of the words courage, consciousness, and confidence. Of course, for courage, when we speak of face-to-face, or when we thought of having face-to-face, most of our batchmates, and even some of them right now, they're still very much apprehensive of the thought of going into face-to-face. There is still fear when we say of face-to-face, and that's also something that we constantly talk about in our CI group, in terms of the fear of going into face-to-face. But our clinical instructor once said that we have to be courageous in facing face-to-face classes, because part and parcel of nursing is skill acquisition, and we could not be competent student nurses if we do not take that leap of faith, and we do not take that opportunity to have limited face-to-face classes once again. Then the second C is consciousness. Since we were given health protocols, it was imperative that we too were very much familiar with health protocols, and that we knew what we're going to do. Should we contract COVID-19, or should our classmates contract COVID-19, or we knew of the health protocols so that we can prevent spread of COVID-19 within our section. It was imperative that we were very much conscious of that, because that led us into the 3rd C, which is confidence. Because we had courage already to do face-to-face, and because we're already aware of the health protocols, we were confident in the system that our college created, and we had confidence in how we could behave when we were in face-to-face classes already. And so putting all of that into summary, that made us take that step forward into going face-to-face classes. And then for the next lesson, protecting the self equates to protecting others. Since there are implemented health protocols already, it was imperative that we were following those protocols strictly, because not only were we protecting ourselves, but in turn, we were also protecting others. Because if we're not, or if rather we are the ones with the infection, it would end up that we'd be bringing it to our classmates whenever we'd have face-to-face classes, or to our patients whenever we'd have duty. So it's not a bad thing that, for example, we'd refuse communal eating because we want to protect ourselves, because ultimately we're also protecting others. And then for the 3rd lesson, this is in regards to honesty and being cautiousness, because these two values basically goes hand in hand. Again, as I've mentioned, most of the cases in our college when it comes to contracting COVID-19, they were because it was because they basically went somewhere else and they contracted the virus not inside the campus and not because of the face-to-face classes. So because our clinical instructors already proliferated that open communication line, that openness in our CI group, it was easy for us to be honest with them na, ma'am, nagka-COVID ko, or that, ma'am, I came in contact with a COVID patient. And because we're already honest with them, we can easily be conscious, we can easily be cautious already with ourselves. So we're comfortable in taking initiative with the situation already. So for example, there was this one case, that student or that classmate of ours contracted COVID-19 because she went to, because she ate in a public area, and that she was able to come in contact with a COVID-19 patient. But because that clinical instructor of hers was very open with them in terms of the communication, she was easily able to tell that clinical instructor, na, ma'am, I have COVID-19. Can I not be in duty? Like, what should I do then? Or can I have activities that can make up for my absence? Something like that. There was also this one situation wherein my classmate had COVID-19 like symptoms, but thankfully she was not COVID positive. But what she did was she openly said, and she was very much honest about her situation. And because she was honest, she said that she didn't want us to feel uncomfortable that she was manifesting symptoms of COVID-19. So she herself took the initiative to not go into duty, not go into face-to-face classes that day. So because she did that, then we were saved from a situation of a CI group contracting COVID-19 situation. So honesty and cautiousness basically go hand in hand, because through this, us students, we feel as if we can take initiative of the situation, and that even if we feel as if the situation worsened because of us, we're able to open up to our clinical instructors, and we can contribute into looking for solutions that can move forward with the situation. And then for the next lesson that we've learned, ultimately, considering all of the challenges and the barriers that we had to go through, all of the adjustment, the emotional torment that we had to go through as well in adjusting for the health protocols, limited face-to-face learning is still top tier, and it's still our preferred way of learning, most especially because we are in the allied health courses, and skills acquisition is very important alongside theoretical learning for us student nurses. And most of the feedback really, even in our batch, is that we're so happy that we're able to do face-to-face, even in our last year, even in our last semester, because we are really able to see and feel what is it like to be immersed in our course, and we're able to see the competencies that were inculcated in our curriculum. We understand better the concepts that are explained by our clinical instructors, and we're able to interact with our classmates. And because we're able to interact with our classmates, we learn more from each other because we're open, and there is a sense of camaraderie that we're not alone in doing the face-to-face. There is a CI group that's behind me. There's a clinical instructor that's behind me. So I cannot worry, or I'm allowed to not worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, because I know that I'm not alone in this journey of face-to-face. Also, it helps that we have face-to-face right now, because a system in our duty schedule, or a system rather that we've implemented in nursing, is that we usually have pre-conference and post-conference. When we say of pre-conference, this is, say, more or less 5 to 10 minutes of us discussing about the cases that we're assigned to before duty. And to be perfectly honest, I've learned more in our pre-conferences and post-conferences, more so than all of the lectures that we were able to have in our virtual duty. Because in the pre-conferences, everyone, there is this feeling of relax, or rather everyone feels relaxed and comfortable in asking questions. There is no online barrier, and we can easily digest all of the things that our clinical instructors are sharing to us about a certain case, or sharing to us about a certain intervention and a certain procedure. Also, in a face-to-face learning and in us being able to have actual duty, the skill set that we're able to acquire comes much easier because now we don't have to go to YouTube just so we can understand what our clinical instructor is saying about the certain procedure, because our clinical instructor can demonstrate it right then and there, and there's no need for us to assume a certain location, assume a certain position, and we don't have to imagine stuff anymore because it's being done right in front of us. So ultimately, we are very much happy with the limited face-to-face learning and all of the challenges that we're able to go through. It basically, or it doesn't even amount to the learnings and the experience and the moments that we're able to get from the limited face-to-face learning. So with that, we would like to end our sharing by basically thanking the university for making efforts in making limited face-to-face possible, because we value so much all of the things that we were able to learn when we had face-to-face, or even up till now that we're having face-to-face. Moreover, we hope that our experience was a sufficient benchmark for our teachers and administrators and how they can also interact with the students, because the pandemic wasn't really mentally friendly for a lot of us. And having clinical instructors that were so supportive, so sensitive of our situation as well, really helped us to move forward as students. And it really pushed us to continue in making better and quality outputs. And also we hope and pray that this situation will already be a better one in the future, and that the university can continuously move forward with limited face-to-face classes, because at the end of the day, all of it, everything was very much worth it. So we end our sharing with that. Thank you very much for listening, ma'ams and sirs, and we apologize for the technical interruption earlier.
Thank you very much, ladies. That was a wonderful and very detailed sharing of experience. And we really appreciate, I'm very sure that all teachers were really listening to get an idea of how the students have felt with the face-to-face classes. Also, I also admire your priority when it comes to being cautious and being honest. So I hope for the next semester or for the next school year, if we will be experiencing face-to-face classes, then we'd also have that kind of priorities when it comes to our students, especially in dealing with this pandemic or with this disease. So thank you very much, ladies. I'm actually congratulating you ahead of time because you'll be graduating soon. So thank you very much and congratulations. At this juncture, okay. At this juncture, we will be entertaining. We will be entertaining, or we will be answering the questions of those who would want maybe to we're curious about what our sharers have been talking about. So kindly place your questions on the chat box, or you could still raise your hand. Okay, we have Ma'am Nadia raising her hand. Ma'am Nadia.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, I didn't think I'd be the first to be called, but this is more from an administration point of view. So I'm not sure. Doc Lily is not here, but I don't know if Sir Earl Jude is still here, but maybe Sir Dave can answer this. It seems like from Sir Dave's presentation, he gave these different scenarios. So my question, actually I have two, but I'll ask one for now. So does it look like the administration will be giving us a choice to choose which classes will be face-to-face, hybrid, blended, high flex? And if that is so, who will decide which classes will be full face-to-face, hybrid, blended, high flex?
Hi, ma'am. Maayong hapon.
Hey, sir.
Hello, hello. The answer to that, ma'am, is basically the decision is given to the college. If you remember, VPAA requested a list of courses or subjects to be offered or to be categorized under limited face-to-face. So it is the college who will identify which among those courses that needed to be categorized under the limited face-to-face. So in other words, kung I remember VPAA requested that checklist, and then the different colleges and departments have to submit that to VPAA to identify which among those subjects are to be delivered in limited face-to-face.
Okay, just to follow up. Pero Sir Dave, iba yung limited face-to-face sa HyFlex. Just as I found out, no, or hybrid. So say, yun nga, we have a lab class or class where 5 out of 10 of the students want to do it online. I mean, yun, iba yung limited face-to-face. The assumption with that is like yung what they did in nursing or what we're doing now, our lab classes, are meeting face-to-face. Pero may HyFlex ka tsaka hybrid.
Yes,
na
ma'am.
yun nga, merong online, merong face-to-face, like Doc Lily's situation.
So my take into this, ma'am, is still it's up to the college because you will be the one to identify the recalibration again, which among those, kasi that is why I presented different models of limited face-to-face. Say for example, the PT is HyFlex. While nursing and medtech are both not HyFlex. They are actually hybrid or the blended part because all of their students signified for the limited face-to-face. So as to the question, which among the model is to be used in a subject that or course that we listed under limited face-to-face, my take really is it's up to the college and to the teacher which of those is to be delivered hybrid, blended, or HyFlex. But again, we have to go back to the guidelines that the guidelines from the joint memorandum IATF is the students has the option. The students have the option whether they go for the limited face-to-face or will continue to the ODL.
So, okay. Last question related pa rin. So if, for example, we decide to do one of our classes as hybrid or HyFlex, and we decide to subscribe for virtual labs. Okay, I just have to share my experience. We did that during the pandemic. So the biology department subscribed to certain virtual lab applications. And it's not easy. Parang I justified everything. We were able to get it. Okay, so that was thanks to Siliman. The problem is every semester we had to justify it. And that was just my department. So basically my question is, will the university support that shift to HyFlex in terms of technological innovation, subscriptions to these applications? They had to ask me to justify it every single semester. The same app, the same virtual lab. So that's from my experience as the chair of the biology department. So yun lang. I'm wondering if it's a whole admin supportive thing, movement to HyFlex and hybrid learning. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions for our speakers? You could also address our questions to our speakers. By the way, Sir Dave, we could answer Sir Jasper's question earlier about.
Yes, sir. The differentiated activities resources. It's basically more of kuan lang, sir. It's really more of articulation. Which part of your teaching strategy is to be delivered synchronous, asynchronous, and the face-to-face. Since we are already, should I say, comfortable with the ODL, meaning it is assumed that we already recalibrated our syllabus for full ODL, then obviously we have to incorporate activities and our resources that will fit also for the face-to-face component. Say, for example, taking on the example shared by our students, it's not easy to wear a face mask for an hour of a face-to-face class. And then what if your activities will require oral recitation and those old blah, 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 singing and so on. So it's difficult to implement that. So the unpacking that is mentioned actually of the recalibration activity is more of articulation of your teaching strategy, which of those strategies is to be or are to be delivered synchronous, asynchronous, or face-to-face. After all, it's a requirement by the Commission on Higher Education to have a catch-up plan or learning plan if in cases that we have to move up to at least level 3.
Thank you, sir. Pero ang my point sa question, sir, is you discussed the high flex learning, and I was thinking, since ni-mention naman si Ma'am Alfie, ni-mention kaganihan, sir, nga depende na lang man na siya sa college. So, and since Ma'am Gina has called for a meeting, this is just thinking out loud ba? What if, for example, the teacher education department would opt to developing a syllabus that has activities that are conducive or that are doable to all three paths. Kanang dili ang ako mga anxiety ana is what if maghimo pa kog activity para sa naa sa face to face, lain po activity ang nasa online, lain po nang ga asynchronous, which is laborious on my part as a teacher. Now since nagnad ka, sir, so that's not, hopefully that's not how high flex will happen. We'll just have one activity that is possible sa tulo ka learning paths or modality.
Yes, sir.
Salamat kay sir.
Okay. So other questions?
Wala na siguro.
Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions. Before we leave our Wednesday session, we will have a high flex pictorial or photo opportunity. So kindly turn on your webcams. And for the live audience, kindly position yourselves here in front. So we will have like live picture taking here with everyone at the back. Okay, so I will also be doing screenshots for our online audience. 1, 2, 3.
Smile, everyone.
And then 1, 2, 3 for the second slide. All right, so we're done. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. By the way, we have to go and visit our Upskilling for Teachers course in Seoul so that we would be able to fill out our evaluation form for us to be able to download our certificate. So again, everyone who attended the meeting virtually, and of course for the live audience, we are all enrolled in the Upskilling for Teachers virtual classroom in order for us to fill out the evaluation form, and then that will be the time we would be able to also download our certificate. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.